Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of what I hope is becoming your favorite show, Seeking Profit. My name is Emil and I'm joined as always with Andrew. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good, man. Doing real good.
I have a random question for you to start this episode off that I have not told you ahead of time. So
You have not.
I have not
Go
told you
on.
this. It is nearing the end of the year for us as we record this. And I don't know about you, I always write down things I want to do, or at least think of things I want to do at the beginning of the year. Some of them happen, some of them don't. What is something that you thought you were going to do or told yourself you were going to start doing this year, resolution or goal or whatever, that just didn't happen?
Exercise consistently, but that I feel like that's everyone or all of the other out of shape people listening. And I think the other one was actually market. And I maybe started at the end of the year, but I was able to find every excuse possible to not market.
Market Lasso?
Market Lasso, me, circa Lasso, but yeah,
Well, at least
just
we
hid away in a dark room.
I know every time I poke and I prod you, I'm like, dude, you got to be posting on Twitter more regularly. You're like, I know, but I would just rather be locked up in my office coding or something.
I started doing conversations and stuff. And honestly, I think you get more followers just chatting on Twitter than you do trying to like post some esoteric, like, oh, that was brilliant. That sentence that you wrote, just chatting works.
You get more good conversations that way for sure. Like that's how you get some DMs going, which, dude, all the value is in the DMs. It's not in.
Oh my God.
The feed.
I didn't realize until like years after Twitter, and then all like the DMs were great. Everyone wants to chat and everyone's super helpful.
Yeah, that's what you realize. Like a lot of this community, it's like people actually, it's funny because the SEO community doesn't feel like this. Like they're always just like shit posting and hating on people and saying you're wrong, I'm better, here's why. But like people starting sites, niche sites, whatever, building brands, like for the most part, pretty supportive and like helping each other and a pretty positive community, I would say.
I was literally going to say, yeah, that the culture of like the Twitter creator community is awesome.
Yes.
Everyone like promotes their thing, but not like shamelessly, like tastefully. And everyone's like, yeah, man, you're killing it with your numbers. Or I love that thing you did. Or you have a typo.
So let's get into this episode. I'm super excited about this one. This is something I've actually wanted to like post online about because I know everyone has like different criteria. But today's episode, we're going to be talking about our checklist for selecting niches. And so we're going to switch off. You do one, I do one, and I'm going to let you take the floor for the first one. What is like one of the things a site must or a niche must meet for you to go out and like register a domain and get started with it?
So, should I start with the controversial one? This is
Yes.
one I feel like everyone talks about to wit's end. I think you need to choose something that you are either already knowledgeable about, have some experience in, or are interested in. And I say that, or I'll wrap it in the disclaimer that if you don't know anything about it, I think you're at a competitive disadvantage because there will be somebody who is knowledgeable. And so they're starting from a higher point. If you have some experience, like say you're a plumber, it just is like intrinsically easier for you to build that. Or if you're interested in it, because as we discussed in a previous episode, year 1, 2, and probably 3 will bring you very little income. So you need to be able to go the distance. And if it's about, I don't know, slippers with animals on them, I don't know if you can do 5 years of that. That's my number one.
I had that as well. I think it's like everyone says that. And I think you hit on the head in terms of like, it doesn't necessarily need to be something you're passionate about, but it needs to be something that you are at least interested in or know about. Because otherwise I just don't like, especially if you're hiring writers, like how do you know what they're writing is good? You can check it. Like, how do you know it's not like complete garbage? How can you help writers get better, give them feedback? like for me, I create all of my content briefs before I send it to a writer. I know a lot of people don't. So for me, that's like, one differentiator, especially people who start publishing a lot, like they just send topics to writers, but I do the brief. So like if I know nothing about this, or I'm not like going to spend the time to research it or whatever, I'm just going to have terrible briefs, which will translate into garbage articles.
And you're not going to have like aha moments where like, oh, we should do that. Cause like no one's
Right.
doing that, or no one really, in personal finance, M1 came out and they had like these pies that you can invest your money in. You make your own pie.
It's a pizza place where you make your own pie.
Like automatically
Yeah.
invests. And because I love personal finance, I was like, oh, let's do portfolios, like the Yale portfolio, the coffee portfolio, the golden butterfly. And like this like little sub niche kind of blew up. But I feel like if you don't really care, you're not thinking about it, you're not going to come up with those things. And I think those exist in like the pet space, everywhere.
Yeah. My main site, I don't really partake in it. I'm interested in it. I used to like, it's another sports site. I used to play it for a very short period of time, but like I have friends and I know people who love it. And so like, that's like my proxy for me being super interested or whatever. Like I can always hit them up and ask them like, hey, what are 20 things you've Googled about this recently, or you've been thinking about, or is, been driving you nuts, or like whatever it is. So at the very least, it's like, do you have people around you who are like super interested in it, who can also feed you ideas or whatever it may be?
Yeah, like they might be just talking about it and you as a fly in the wall just, catch it. Or because you're an outsider but interested, maybe you see the non-obvious thing because everyone's looking in the same direction.
Yep. I'll throw one in here. This is actually my number one. I had it kind of buried in the list, but I moved it up to number one. To me, it's that the audience spends money in this area. So I showed on another episode, like a start I started from scratch. Like we saw the RPMs. Right now it's doing decent. It's like $25, but it's like the best part of the year. Like I don't think it's going to stay at $25. I think it'll go back down sub 20 when we're like off season. Other side is like 30 to 35 year round and more like during on season. And it's because it's an audience that like is very interested in this topic. They spend money on gear and equipment and getting better and all this stuff. And so like, to me, that was a huge light bulb. And so like, the site I just started recently, it's another area where the people who are searching for this stuff, they spend a ton of money in. So for me, it's like, that's going to lead to good affiliate articles we can write. That means advertisers are going to want to get in front of them, and drive my RPMs up. So for me, that's number one. Does the audience spend money in this area?
And you're saying like when you say area, you mean like in the niche. Like if you were talking about cars, people spend money on their cars, new wheels, new seats, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was like trying to think.
Look at GIFLab, right? GIFLab is like literally a site where people are looking for things to buy at this moment. Personal finance, it's literally your money, right? Which makes it a catch-22 in that like Google comes down harder on sites that talk about money. But, your affiliate revenue was insane off of those clicks you would send to your people. So
examples of ones that are bad that I see a lot of people do are like quotes or blah, blah, blah net worth.
Yeah.
Or like how to insert really like simple thing described with an image, like how to write a check, Like,
yes.
no one's buying anything after they Google how to write a check. They're looking at your image, they're saying, that's where this goes. And then they're moving on.
Right. You can, let's say it's in your niche. You can cover that if it's like a 1-2, because whatever. A lot of people search for it and you'll make money off it. Like I have quotes that are relevant, like quote articles relevant to my niche on each of my sites because thousands of people search for them, but the RPMs are super bad. And it's funny. I actually thought about like, I should make a quote site. There's so many, like, you pop in quotes for whatever in Ahrefs and the list is insane, right? Like low competition, everything has thousands of searches. but there's actually some very good quote sites out there, like some that, you know, they have hundreds and people can submit them and you can upvote and downvote them. And it's like, I'm not going to like try to beat this.
I will say that there were many times where like I had this like partial quote in my head. I want to remember what the quote was. I have like some of the words, or I know the person who did it. You know, and if you like search for like quotes by Benjamin Franklin, say, there's no real good lists like that are enumerated, deduped. You know, I wound up like finding my answers on like Pinterest and stuff through images that I can't even copy the text from.
Really?
Anyways, yeah. All right. So my next one is about the market. Is the niche or the market growing? And the thesis is that perfect execution in a bad niche will not be a successful business, but reasonably bad execution in an excellent niche will make you a lot of money. And so an example, personal finance, fashion, pets, electronics, electric vehicles, like these are areas that are just growing so quickly and so large that you could be a little tiny non-existent bug in one of these markets and earn a lot of money. And an example of bad ones, and I was actually having trouble, and my wife and I could really not find any, but it was like tobacco, fax machines, Walkman, Pogs. You know, I was looking up baseball cards, and it's like there's a reinsurgence, but the long-term trend is like way down. You know, things that where you can create a trading card site, you know, maybe there's a bit of a reinsurgence, but like the market winds are against you. And so it's just going to be really hard. You have to like eat the whole niche to even do well.
I like that. That's a good one. I don't have that on my list, but it 100% should. And you know, you might like, that's a good one because I might search for something and be like, oh man, like nobody is writing anything about, like you mentioned Walkmans. That's a great example. Like no one's writing content about Walkmans. All these things are 3 years old. Well, it's because it's a dying industry, right? No one has a Walkman. So you could be like thinking, oh, there's a ton of opportunity here, but you need to like zoom out and say, is that because this is like a dying search category or whatever?
Yeah. Or like, will it be dead in a few years?
Right.
You know, let it die peacefully. Start with
Don't
something else.
touch it. Just leave it alone. All right. My next one. So this is, I think, very relevant with the rise of Chat GPT and AI content just getting better and better. I like to find niches that require some level of expertise. So either a subject matter expert or a hobbyist, because I want to avoid something that anyone, you know, I could go find any decent writer on Upwork and they, you know, examples, lifestyle, you mentioned, you know, like home goods, things that like are just, you don't really need expertise. It's just, you can write about it. Like I would even say cooking recipe sites, like those feel almost like anyone can do them. There's no real, there is some, I shouldn't say there's no expertise there, but I'm trying to think of
chicken cordon bleu recipe will not add to the conversation.
But like, I'm trying to find something where it's really hard for the AI to like really know the subject and have the nuance that a person who has expertise can like talk about. That's one of my selection criterias now.
I absolutely agree. I had it like slightly worded differently, but I said something that isn't commoditized information. Like two super examples say are like sports scores or the weather.
Yeah.
Where one, like AI will eat that. There's really, you know, Google will answer that. You know, it needs to be deeper.
Do you think GIFLab technically violates this rule?
So what we believe with GiftLab is that it's a curation play, and that we believe that our taste level is good or better than the people that are competing with us, and so we're winning because our taste level is better.
Okay. All right.
If that is still true, if you believe we even have a good taste, that's a whole nother thing. But like when we create it, we're like, these are so bad. Like, you know, if you look for like gifts for a 3-year-old boy, I have a 3-year-old boy, didn't realize this when I didn't have a 3-year-old boy, but now I know really what are good gifts and what are just not good gifts. Like, if does it have wheels? No wheels, he doesn't want it. That's it. You know, any car, truck, boat truck, whatever. As long as there are wheels, he'll like it. So, you know, if you have some experience in it, or you can bring someone in.
You guys also, to your credit, you guys also like look at what sells and what doesn't, and like remove the things that don't, meaning people don't think this is the intent here or whatever, like it's a good match, versus the things that sell a lot of. You guys are like, you know, moving those around, moving them up. So it's the best things that are going to be the most relevant for that audience are at the highest. So I don't think a lot of people do that either. Is like really analyze purchases to make the list up.
We know, like, we start with a decent guess, but really, like, the mass of the internet will vote on our behalf and tell us.
Right. All right, what do you got next?
I have one. So things that you feel like have an opening, something you believe you can do better. And so I don't think it's fair to compare yourself against like the New York Times or any of these sites. Like, I'll never beat them. But there's 10 results for every search term. And there's a lot of things that aren't just these huge, big head terms, you know, that are long tail. And say you were looking at shoes. Recently, Gail from Authority Hacker tweeted this site. It's called The Hoops Geek, and they go to ridiculous level detail on shoes and show all the purchasing options, breaking down. I mean, it's a beautiful site. And so the thing is, like, shoes have been done and done and done and done. And granted, they niched it into basketball, but still, but they just took it to such a level. They realized, like, the shopping experience sucks. Whether it's comparisons, colors, where you can buy it. And so they delivered something that is far better than honestly what Amazon provides for stuff like this. And so it's not like you have to create that, day one, but ultimately you need some angle where you think you can be better.
I agree. That's a good one. Another example is the one I talked about earlier, the quote site, right? Like, I thought about potentially getting into a site that just has a bunch of quotes on different topics, and I uncovered this site that like literally covers every single one. And it's like, user generated content in a way that people can upvote and downvote things. So you get the best quotes at the top, people downvote stuff, it moves to the bottom. So like, that was a perfect example, right? Everyone's just creating these static ones, and they came in and created this nice interactive one and brought something new to the table that no one else was.
A similar thing with music lyrics. I forget the name of the site that kind of like sourced it from people, like fans, and people could then like select lines and say what they think the meaning is of that line. And so it's like music lyrics is so commoditized. I mean, you almost don't need to Google it, but if you have like another level, maybe it's worth it.
Yeah. And we're talking about like almost the delivery of it, right? It's easy to be like, oh, there's a bunch of bad content on this topic, but like, that's so vague. Like, I'm just going to make 10x better content than what's here. But to like actually think like, no, I'm going to completely change the look and feel and like delivery mechanism of how people usually see these. I think that's kind of a way to wedge in. My next one, I think is my last one that you covered a couple of mine as well. So once I've found a niche that meets all the other criteria, I need to find a keyword cluster to get started, like that has decent volume, a bunch of variations of things. Let's call it like, you just brought up the basketball site, right? Like, best basketball shoes for wide feet, for jumping, for centers, for guards, all those things where I can just find immediately a bunch of low difficulty, high enough traffic where I can just boom, get started. I got my first 20 to 40 content pieces just ready to go. Like, for me, I need to find something where I just have a bunch of clusters and I can get started right away. That's like a big thing for me.
Yeah, if you don't see a path forward,
Yeah.
not that I'm the biggest fan of this guy, but James Altucher?
Yeah,
probably
the
butchering his
dude
last
with
name.
the curly fro, New York guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I started listening to My Matters, and I was like reading all these things and trying to figure out, he has this idea where you take this pad, and he would use a waiter's pad, and he would just write down all his ideas, or he would try and come up with ideas and just write them down. And so when I started, it was just like lists upon lists of like what would I do personal finance, or whatever, some other topic. And then what would you even write about if you were in there? What would you create? And I think you almost have to like get the first 3 layers of garbage off before you can start to get to some like decent things. And if you can't get 3 layers of bad off, there's no good. There's just not enough there. Like you have to almost let it flow.
Yeah.
There has to be a flow.
And I put this one further down because I think the other things we've mentioned are just, they need to be met first, because you can find things that have a like awesome keyword cluster, tons of variation, no difficulty. But then again, it's like, I'll bring the quotes. I know I'm murdering the quotes example, but like, that's just one where, I don't see a wedge where I can create something unique or different where my site would stand out from the others. So I'm not even going to continue on.
I have no more, but I will add in one more from experience that happened later. Can you even create things on this topic? For example, if you were writing about things recovering from, say you suffered from cancer and you were talking about the experience and recovering and this and that, or you feel like you have some knowledge through personal experience, you're not a doctor, so you just can't write about it. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was personal finance. I have no 3-letter acronym after my name. And, I have earned a lot, spent a lot, learned a lot, talked to experts. It's not the same thing as being a fiduciary, for example. And so it's one of those problems where I can either go and get a CPA and write about it, or choose something else.
I would even just expand that to say, don't create is not your money, your life. That's like another checklist item for me. It just, man, Google is like cutthroat in anything money or health related. And I mean, for the rest of like Healthline and Investopedia will eat your lunch all day. Like you have no chance.
We were talking about like niche growing and stuff. I read this book, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel.
Okay.
And, whatever you think about the guy and all of the weird, dumb things that he does, he has like some really good ideas. He is a smart guy. And he really talks about avoiding competition, and how like competition, it just is like a race to the bottom, zero margins. And so like you said, with Investopedia and stuff, if there's like fierce competition there, like why enter the fray? Go somewhere where no one's looking.
Right. At least when it comes to Google, because Google is a zero-sum game. I think for like service businesses, that's less relevant advice. Like, that guy Sweaty Startup, Nick Huber on Twitter, he talks about like go into niches, go into service businesses that have tons of competition, but your competition is running their business like it's 1970, using fax machines, not picking up the phone. So I think certain businesses, totally, you can have an awesome business going after things that, there's a lot of competition, but no one's doing it well. But for Google, zero-sum game, way, way harder.
I have one idea, just to like really drag this closing out. I've seen a lot of sites coming into Lasso, or just in general, that are hyper localized. I was thinking, because the service business you said, where when I was in Hoboken, there was a site that was created while I was there, HobokenGirl.com, and then everything about Hoboken and the surrounding area, whether it was reviews of restaurants or this or that, was just there. And I'm seeing a lot of people do, whether it's like Quebec or just cities or towns or locales. There's so little competition at the local level. Your borough, your county, that may be ripe for a site. You might not even have to do that good content. honestly.
I think so. And you'll, I mean, anytime someone searches for anything near me, Google should pick you up and show you for that. I mean, it's with restaurants, it's a little bit hard, right? Like restaurants near me, like Yelp has done a pretty amazing job with SEO on those. But like, I still think you're right. I think like if you can just hone in on a locale, you have awesome reviews and like you visited 10 restaurants or 10 whatever pet grooming places and you're talking about your experiences with those, I think you'll show up for a ton of local stuff. Hopefully you pick a locale that's big enough, right? If it's like some place in middle of nowhere with a population size of 3,000, you're probably not going to do too well, but yeah.
Like if you're in Wyoming, you may need to do the state of Wyoming.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's wrap this one up there. If you missed anything or you want to check out what we talked about, check out the show notes below in the description or wherever you're listening or watching. Make sure you connect with Andrew and I on Twitter, Andy Phoebe and Emil Shore, and we will catch you all in the next episode. Talk to you later.
Later, man.
We're seeking profit. We're seeking profit. We're seeking profit. We're seeking profit.